Now I'm going to build on the previous description of a resource curse and provide some examples. The resource curse characteristic that we see. Not every country, but on average, our poorer countries, our lower income countries have an over-reliance on a particular resource. That resource could be a mineral, could be a drug, could be something, could be oil, for example. So there's some type of natural resource in which your country has a lot of money from, but at the same time has an over-reliance on. So let's say all of a sudden people don't need oil anymore. If overwhelmingly all of your country is devoted to oil production, you're screwed big time. And so you can see how these countries that have an over-reliance on one particular resource are very much at the mercy on if people still want that resource. And so this is something to also keep in mind. Further, when we think about the resource curse, its characteristic is it has countries that have this particular phenomenon have slower economic growth. The idea is they might have a boom because of that resource being in demand. However, they're not investing in other industries. They're not investing in various other types of economic sectors, various other types of things. They're not interested in developing education. They're not interested in investing in technology or improving gender equality. Instead, it's all about that resource. It's all about whatever that number one driver of that country's economy might be. Further, key to understanding the resource curse, and if you ever had to describe it, is you have to talk about the role of power. Because key to this is whoever owns or controls, who has, full access to a particular resource, has all the power. And so that's what in a lot of these countries, you might have a dictatorship or a government that will take over control of a particular resource. And so essentially, it's all about that resource. And whoever has power of that resource, they have control. And so if the next guy wants to take over and become leader of a country or wants to take over control of a particular resource, then they'll use various means to achieve that objective. And so you might use violence. And so you can see where conflict is involved. As you have people wanting to fight or wanting to use violence or wanting to just essentially gain physically access to a particular resource. And so power is key. Further, how do people keep power is using corruption. And so you find also these countries that are lower income, countries that have a lot of over-reliance on resources, essentially have a situation where corrupt leaders are trying to keep that power, and so they're not investing in education. They're not investing in health, even though people all throughout the particular country might be dying of infectious diseases and things that we can control and get rid of, but because that money in that particular technology is not getting access to the people who need it, because instead it's going to a bunch of machine guns and tanks and various things to people build up to keep power. You can also see why that power and that corruption and conflict occurs there. So oftentimes you see a lot more money spent on military and protection and firearms rather than on education, health, and the general well-being of the country. So all these various factors work together to understand why these places on average have slower economic growth. A non-governmental organization called Transparency International has gone around and essentially mapped the most corrupt countries of the world. And on average, you see a pattern here. Some of the most corrupt countries in the world are also countries that are prone to the resource curse.